Hello, I'm Emily.
I'm Scott,
And I'm Chloe.
and today we're going to be talking about product and cost curves. Please remember to check our notation and language use with your professor because it may vary. So here we have an example problem. It tells us, assume we begin with one factory and two machines, and these are fixed inputs like it says, and we have the following labor, and then we have this table. It tells us labor, and then for each value of labor or like number of workers, we have a certain level of output, and we're producing TVs here. So then we want to do two things. We want to fill in the marginal product column and the average product column. So first of all, what does marginal product mean? It's the additional output that you get from adding an additional unit of labor. So for example, it doesn't make sense to talk about marginal product when there's zero labor, but if we look at the first unit of labor, so we're adding basically one worker and our output goes up by 3. So the marginal product of that first worker is 3. And then similarly, when we go from 1 to 2, we add one worker and our output goes up by 5. So the marginal product is 5. And we can keep continuing this process, filling in the columns. So the third worker, our output goes up by 7. For the fourth worker, 23 minus 15 means our output goes up by 8. Here we go, fifth worker, our output goes up by 7. Sixth worker, it actually stays the same, so our marginal product is 0. And then for the seventh worker, whoops, it actually goes down by 1, so minus 1 is our marginal product. And then we have a quick question here. In words, what does the marginal product at labor of 3 mean? And what that means is you look at this where labor equals 3, you add that third worker and your output goes up by 7. So it's the additional output that the third worker creates. And then we want to calculate the average product column. And how we do that is average product is output divided by labor. So it's just how much output per unit of labor. Again, it really doesn't make sense to, it's an undefined quantity when labor is 0. So that doesn't make sense. But if we start with labor 1, we take our output of 3 and divide by our one worker. That worker is producing an average of 3 units. Then at a labor level of 2, we have an output of 8 divided by 2 for our labor. So those two workers, on average, are producing 4 units of output each. So we just continue this process. 15 over 3 gives us 5. 23 over 4 is 5.75. And for the fifth, for 5 units of labor, 30 divided by 5 is 6. 6 units of labor, we do 30 divided by 6, and that's 5. And then 7 units of labor, we do 29 over 7, and that's about 4.14 approximately. And then it asks us here, what's the average product at labor of 3? What does that mean? And it means basically that when you have 3 workers, so labor of 3, our average product is 5, meaning each of those workers produces 5 units of output on average. Maybe one produces more than another, but if you average them, it's 5 units. So then here we have the same table. It has all the numbers filled in that we just calculated. And then we have some more questions down here. So it says, where does LDMP set in? And LDMP means law of diminishing marginal product. So I'm going to abbreviate that, diminishing marginal product. And that sort of sounds like when is marginal product negative, but it's actually different. It means, so diminishing, basically, it's the same thing as decreasing. When is marginal product decreasing? And you can see, if you look at the column, it's going up here from 3 to 5, up from 5 to 7, up from 7 to 8. But after that fourth unit of labor, it starts to go down. So we have from 8 to 7, and then from 7 to 0, 0 to -1. Our marginal product is actually decreasing. So we would say that LDMP sets in, so this is question 1, after the fourth worker, or with the fifth worker. That's where it sets in, because we see at labor level of 5, that's when it starts to decrease from 8 to 7. And basically that means that when you add that fifth worker, you're still getting more output out of that worker, like we see here. Your total output still goes up, but the rate at which that output goes up is lower. So it's just diminishing marginal returns. Like each worker will be adding less and less output from then on. And then question 2 here asks, where does marginal product become negative? So like we said, that's different than law of diminishing marginal product. And this one's a little easier to spot if you just look at the column. Which one's a negative number? Well, it's right here, when marginal product is -1. And that's at labor level of 7. So you would say marginal product becomes negative, after the sixth worker, or with the seventh worker. And what does that mean? Well, this one's a little more concerning than diminishing marginal product. It means that actually when you add this seventh worker, your output's going down. So you definitely don't want to hire that seventh worker. This may happen because you only have so many machines or something that you can work with, or the seventh worker might just get in the way or distract other workers. So that's why you can actually have output go down when you add more labor. So that's all we have today about product and cost curves. If you have any further questions, please ask your professor or come into the tutoring center.
Bye.